It has been 15 years since the changes within my body and the commencement of strange thoughts in my brain forced me to look up the word nymphomania for the first time. When I first looked up this word, my body was thrashing about. My attention span was non-existent, and my ignorance about the emerging feelings that possessed me while being a young girl were overwhelming me. I did not know what was happening, but I was scared. How to act, who to talk to, what to do. My brain distilled all of these thoughts and combined these with the sensation I was feeling as I endlessly touched myself. If only I knew then what I know now. At that time, I was very fearful that I might be abnormal. For us all teenage girls, I had to be normal, in the mainstream, and most importantly, part of the in crowd. It took more than a year to understand that I was different, a serious different, and I was so worried how to handle this difference, while terrified that if I acted on these drives, I would get a reputation and gain the stigma of slut. The girls would frequently talk about sex in small groups, but the attention of the other girls was short and would wander. I pushed the sexual discussions so hard that one day I saw how they stared at me. This was an early lesson. Never appear different in school. How to gauge my sexual drive against others? Maybe they were all the same as I, but I did not think so. My journey still continues, but back then I understood little and was in the dark ages. Even today I'm not in the age of enlightenment. Still, with resourcefulness and determination, I plod forward. It all started when I was a young, ignorant girl, fearful of the animal drives and unreasoning impulses that were driving me. Why me? My thinking was changing day by day back then. I had accepted these gyrations and torments were all about sex. When you know nothing, how is it possible to understand anything? It was more than just my ignorance about sex, but the combined ignorance of all of my peers about sex. In groups, we would discuss sex, but in so many silly ways. The boys would pretend to be sophisticated studs and boast loudly about their sexual exploits in front of us girls. They all had fanciful stories about being locked on by a vagina, while always displaying a condom ring showing through their pants. This was their badge of faux manhood at the time. I understood that I was different, but not how I was different. Forget the silly idea that I could discuss my feelings with my parents. My parents never had sex, so they could not tell me anything and would be shocked if I asked any questions. The discussions I had with my school friends were ignorant and unhelpful. In our collective ignorance, we mostly giggled about everything sexual. With my 3 girlfriends, the sexual discussions were frequent, but swamped in ignorance and old wives' tales we had heard. My best recollection was that semen was green. I did not know why we believed this to be true, but we were absolutely convinced that it was green. Then, the day of the pictures. The boys will get an occasional pornographic pictures which they will show around. Part of their bragging act of being sexually experienced. They were eager to show such contraband pictures to any and all girls, but only a few of us had the courage to look at such pictures. An opportunity arose for Louisa and me to see such pictures, which disgusted me. It was my first clear picture of a cock, and it was inside a girl's mouth. While staring at the picture, the guys were bragging about when they had previously received blowjobs. As revolted as I was, I stared at this picture until it was taken from me. I gagged in a small way several times as the attraction of that first pornographic picture fought against all of the anti-sex lectures that I had received at school. I had a surreal, strange, and intoxicating sleepless night. The image of that cock and sexual act was perfectly clear for me to feast on all night. My all-consuming thoughts of that night were all sexual. The impure dreams I was having, as I longed to hold the real cock in my hands, electrified and terrified me. I had touched myself many times before, with varying results, but for the first time I became so wet and excited by the recalling of that picture that I had to get up and wipe myself several times. Although I did not understand at the time, this was the beginning of how I would pass through high school. No real sex in real time, but enough stimulation when combined with pictures for me to be satisfied. For a while,